Hey, so this is part 4 of class exercise number 2. I want you to go in and look at this with as well. Let me just take out this console button out here with it as well. So again, I'm in the index.js with it. Let me put a space in this right here. So this is what it's supposed to look like. So we're getting an element by ID, putting into the document object with this ID right here. It's going to store it in a constant that is increment btn. That's the constant with it. We got one more we need to actually pull from as well with it. I'd like for you to look at, if you look at the index.html, it's the div one we need to actually have access to. And if you recall, the ID is count display. Okay, so jump back to your index. And when you come in and just highlight, it's the same thing. I'm just going to modify some of the stuff with it. So it'll be a little faster with it. I'm going to take that on the second line, paste it in here. If you remember, the ID from that div tag is what? It's the count display. I'm going to toggle between the index.html and the index JavaScript with it. So I'm going to copy this is index.html, jump back here to the index with it, paste that in here with it. We get access to that, get element ID, put in the document object with it. This time we're going to give this a constant. Let's call this thing count display. Alright, so in here, this is where we actually have that we have access this at the same time with it. So I want to make sure you understand that this JavaScript, this index.js is connected through the index.html through the DOM model with it. So for example, I want to take this increment button that we have right here as a constant with it. I want to take it down here, copy it, and paste it down here, and we can actually go in, for example, and make it as an object because it's a constant, right? I can do like an inner text, for example, that I can actually use in the inner text, and I can set that to equal, for example, in equal to +9, for example, or +9 with it, right? And I can also do the same thing as the inner the count display. That's with it because I made that into a constants with it. I can do that as an inner text. Let's do this one, and then let's put that as an equal to a 1. The moment I'm going to do this, I'm going to save this right here. It's going to update this page right here as well. So Control S. And you're going to see you see that 9 right there, which is this 9, which is the increment. But these two files are talking to each other with it right now with it. And that's what I want you to see is that how the React objects is going to be communicating through the DOM object with it as well. That's just a really basic JavaScript. I want you to see the relationship between the two with it. Okay. So I just want to give you what this looks like over here as an output with it. Let's go ahead and wipe this out with it, just keeping the other two, the top 2 lines with it. I want to create a button to increment what's going on with this as well with it. So let's do increment. Remember that increment button, this object that we have right here, right? That constant right there with it. And I'm going to do what's called the API for the method for the add an event listener, meaning that's what JavaScript is all about. It's about interacting, engaging. There's a whole bunch of activities, as you can see, with it. But this particular JavaScript is going to wait until you click on to the button. That is an event. That's what's happening with it as well. So you're setting up as the event listener with it. And I'm going to open up the parentheses in here. It has 2 parameters in here. The first parameter is a click with it, right? So, and the second parameter, if you come to the right of that apostrophe and hit comma, and you're going to put in some sort of parentheses, a method in this thing as well with it, right? And if you do a pointer with this, and if you point it, if you see how I hit point, an equal and a greater than sign with this thing, an equal and a greater than sign with it, which is a pointer. And you tell it to go hit the right arrow key between the lesser than with it as well. Here, let me do this. Hit enter. you're going to put inside of this thing a left curly bracket and a right curly bracket for this thing, so it looks like this. All right, so you have this one right here. This left one is this right one right here, and this one in all this inside of this particular function, you have a nested curly left and right curly parentheses or curly fries, however you want to call this. All right, with it. So inside of this, all this, I want this to be an alert with it. And let's say you click on that particular button, you're going to send a message. You clicked me, something along that line with it. Can you do that? And that leaves it with it as well. So again, we just save it. Control S saves it, right? So you put on this button right now with it, and when I click on this number 1 right now, you should see a little you click me and click OK with it, right? So this is what actually happened with it. You call this event based on listening on a click, and this is what actually happened. You put a pointer and tell it to alert to click me in this. So this is the syntax right now with it. So one of the things I want to talk, a lot of this has to do with, if you ever had me for JavaScript, ITSE 1311, one of the things that we get into is we talk about, there's a lot of computer science programming concepts that I want to cover with you. All right, so in here, I'm going to take out this alert box right now with it, just remove it because we want to click on this 1 plus 1 and this changes to 0, right? Well, before we could change this to 0 state, this is a state we're doing, and in computer science we call this initialization. You initialize a particular data to start out with a value with it. Well, the syntax in C++ is init. Here, you can declare int is, for example, is a data type, and you give a variable name with it. Here, all you need to do is just do let. So let is equivalent to you declare as var, variables, and all that stuff with it. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about JavaScript with this as well. We're going to declare a variable. We're going to call this thing current count as the variable. And I want to set that equal to 0. All right. And inside of this is what actually happens when I actually click on the button with it. What I like to do is to take the this current count right here, current count. I would like to, remember the equal sign, I'm going to do the equal sign, current count plus 1. All right. Now, I want to clarify this is that if you imagine, if you put this 0 in here, place the 0 right here, 0 plus 1 will update this memory right here as to 1. You see how that works? And that's how you click on it. It's going to update the value of the current state of the current. I have 2 R's here. I did 3 R's here. I just realized that, so I misspelled that. I had an extra R there. Sorry. Current count with it. So make sure you do the right one with it. There's 2 R's. My apology. I misspelled that. So current 2 R's. Okay. So this current count belong here 0 equal to 0. 0 plus 1 updates it to 1. All right. But in computer science, we don't write it like this because we're lazy and we want to show that we have a hidden language. So what we do is what? We do plus plus. All right. So that tells you that count plus 1. That's what that is with it. All right. The second thing is that we need to actually display this thing. So we need to take that current count, right? And we need to set it to, remember how we display things with it? We set that to equal. I want to write this from the right to the left so you can see what I'm talking about with it. I want to take count, display, and then I'm going to use the inner text. Inner text and inner HTML will work as well, but we're going to do the inner text in this one with it as well. So when I click on this, let me tighten up the code here, take out the white line here. So when I take this out with it, I'm going to do Command S, saves it. Now this should work if I click on this plus 1 right here. All right, watch. Watch that 0 should change if I did it right. Wow, it did, right? You see how that changes? So that's what I want it to look like, making sure it does that with it. Now, so one of the things I want to point out is this. This is, you see this object that if I clicked on 1 and it just increments every time I do this, right? I can see her do it all day with it. But this is where React comes in with it. And you see how many lines of codes I had to do for a button, and the display for this thing is what? And it's about 9 lines of codes with it. Well, what if I want to do this, if I copy this, if I want another button on there, okay? So I'm just going to copy this, come down here, and I do this for the second button of this thing as well with it, right? And watch, when I save this, this is going to have an error. I know it's going to have an error with it, but there's a whole bunch of errors on here because why? Look, you need to rename some of these things with it as well. So increment button, for example, I need to go in here, for example, I need to go in and rename this button over here, an HTML on the index. Let's take this index right here. I got to do the second row button on this thing, right? So I need to come over here this time around with it, and I'm going to copy this button right here, copy this line right here, copy it in the .html page, paste that here, rename that increment button over here, put a 1 in front of it. This is the second set of button I'm putting in. I'm making a little different ID. I can't have two the same ID on the same page, right? So this is the .html, Command S, save, come back to my index.js right here, come in here with it. Again, this is, I put a 1 into this thing, put a 1 in. Remember now, this is this 1 right here is this one right here, right? Over in the index. So I come back over here, I have to even rename this part right here, increment button ID, just put a 1 after it, count display, put a 1 after it, even the current count I have to put a 1 after it. So you see how I'm going into this thing and I have to put a 1 on the current count is 1, inner text, and I display this one as the current display and make that into a display of a different display as well. So this makes it a little different from all the stuff that I have right here. And you notice when I save this with it, I'm going to click on this one, this changes with it, and then I click on this one, it still doesn't work. I wonder why. Hold on a second. As you can see, I'm glad I made this error here so you can see where the mistake is with it. Yes, the mistake is here. If you look at increment count on this one is what? This increment count is the 0, right? So this one needs to be actually updated, be fixed with it as well. This, because I can't call this current count here. What should this be? Current count 1, right? Because this is current count 1. I'm initializing it to 0. So I let it to be equal to 0. So I'm going to save this right now with it. So I click on this, and you can see how this changes on the errors with it, all right? So you see where the syntax errors are coming in with this right now with it? Yeah, because this increment button needs to change to what? This button right here, right? So I need to use that button to be a 1 in here as well. So Command S saves it. So if I increment this separately, this is my button 1. This is my first button on here as well. 2 separate buttons that I separated. This is what your one calls vanilla JavaScript. Okay, your plain old vanilla JavaScript. This is how you would do it. You have 2 sets of buttons that you have created, increasing the amount of lines with it. The React avoids this. This is my point. So what React library file does is it prevents you from, if I want 10 buttons on here, what do? Well, all I need to do is what? 1 of these set of codes, and I can repeat this over on the other side with it as well. So it's about the objects, it's about the Doom models that talks together with it, and that's what this is about. So this is 13 minutes going into this thing. I want you to do what you need to do, take a screen, whatever it is that you need to take a screenshot of this for your assignment with it. I will conclude this is part 4 of your assignment, part of your video, okay? So I'm going to stop the video right here at this time, the end of part 4.